Okay, Felipe, I think we could probably kick off now. What do you reckon?
100%.
Okay.
Fantastic. Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Felipe. I work at the Macquarie University Incubator here in Macquarie Park. And today we're joined by you, but also by two fabulous people, Sarah and Sam, which we'll introduce them in a minute. Welcome to week 4 of the Social Impact Inspiring Entrepreneurs series. Just a bit of housekeeping. Sam she's got a lot to tell us today. We'll take questions at the end. Feel free to pop them into the chat meanwhile, just so you don't forget it. And I'll be fitting those into the session as we go. Also, if you can please leave your video on. There's nothing more annoying than talking to a black screen. Other than that, let's kick off properly by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting today. I'd like to pay my respects to the elders, both past, present, and emerging. And I'll play a quick video to you, which I think is really inspiring. So let's do it.
Welcome. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of Macquarie University land, the Warramargal clan of the Darug Nation, whose cultures and customs have nurtured this land since the Dreamtime. We pay our respects to elders past, present and future. We welcome people of all nations and all faiths. Kwai Bidja, Jamna Payala Janawi. Come here, we speak together. We have 60,000 years of archaeological evidence of Aboriginal habitation at Lake Mungo and 20,000 years in Ryde. We have great antiquity. Today, hundreds of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people graduate from Macquarie University. The Darug Nation had famous leaders such as Chief Yarramundi, Naraginji, Colby and Maria Locke. Many of the descendants of these Darug people live today amongst you. We celebrate with you our ongoing attachment and custodianship of this country. We celebrate the achievements of Macquarie University. Welcome.
Awesome. Just a couple of words on the incubator. Probably you all know, but for you who's here for the first time, the Macquarie Incubator is this vibrant community of entrepreneurs, students, researchers, and innovation enthusiasts. And we are really nurturing a very vibrant community here to gather the people who are using innovation to solve the world's most important problems. And today, we will be joined by a person who's actually doing that and taking very strong action towards that purpose. So I might hand over to Sarah from Social Impact Hub so she can introduce Sam. Sarah, over to you.
Thanks, Felipe. And thanks again for that welcome to country. It always puts me in such a sort of focused and relaxed frame of mind when I hear it. So it's lovely. Thank you. So it's my pleasure today to introduce Sam Seljak, who is a social entrepreneur, and she's actually started a number of community-driven initiatives. But in 2016, she founded Seljak Brand with her sister Karina, and she's had a lot of experience in the entrepreneurship space. So she's also worked for an Indigenous creative agency for a number of years, and in digital marketing for IKEA in Sweden. So she has a bachelor in business and journalism and a master's in sustainability leadership. But her award-winning wool blankets is, I guess, the focus of what she's going to talk about today. And I'll hand it over to you, Sam.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so everyone can see that? Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I also wanted to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I work, which is the Yagara and the Turrbal people. I'm up in the Anjan or Brisbane. Yeah, and it's a pleasure to join you today to share my entrepreneurial story. I don't have the chat box visible to me as I present, so we'll save questions to the end, but if you want to unmute yourself and jump in with a question, you're totally welcome to. Otherwise, we can, we can do them all at the end. As Sarah mentioned, I'm Sam Seljak, one half of Seljak Brand. The other half is Karina, my sister. And we make closed loop recycled merino wool blankets out of factory floor offcuts. We envision a world without waste, and we make beautiful and useful products that are restorative by design. So we want to prove that waste is valuable, and we want to divert it from landfill. So Karina and I founded Seljak Brand in 2016. Karina is a trained fashion designer, and myself, as a social entrepreneur, felt we were equipped and indeed obliged to respond to the unsustainable way that we make and use things like textiles. So I studied a double degree in business economics and journalism up here in Queensland, and Karina did fine arts, fashion and business advertising. And since I've completed a master's in sustainability leadership in Sweden, and Karina did a professional development course at the Centre for Sustainability Leadership, which is now at Monash. And last year we both participated in Al Gore's climate reality training. But after we left uni, we both spent a few years working independently. I worked at the purpose-driven business Galimba, an Indigenous creative agency, and also started several community initiatives up in Brizzy, while Karina headed to New York to work at the hub of the fashion industry, or one of the hubs. And she spent about 6 months interning in New York to realise that the fashion industry is extremely exploitative and wasteful. So she then moved onto the artisanal food scene in Brooklyn, where companies were far more innovative. So the ginger syrup company she worked for spent all of their pulped ginger waste to the chocolate factory just down the road to be turned into fine chocolate bars. And so we were kind of inspired by this more resourceful way of doing business, and decided it was kind of time to start our own business. And we did a lot of personal exploration and study into the circular economy. And so when we were starting Seljak Brand, we really wanted to find alternative models to make, use and dispose of stuff. And we wanted to offer something beautiful to consumers, so they could see how they could get involved in a sustainable future. We wanted to work with local resources, and we were really fascinated by wool and the key role it had played in Australia's economy in the past. And not to mention the fact that it's a wonder fibre. There are so many amazing properties of wool. So that kind of led us into researching what was happening in the wool industry in Australia. And we came across a mill in Tasmania at the start of 2015 that collected all their production offcuts. So you can see that on the photo on the left, and then regenerated it into a new yarn. And this wasn't a commercial product for the mill. They weave the finest merino in Australia and really beautiful alpaca luxury throws. So they were offering like a very high value luxury product to the market. But it was a practice that we were really inspired by, and it was the story of restorative design that we wanted to tell consumers. And this was consumers that are becoming more and more conscious about the things they buy. So the fashion industry is the second most polluting industry in the world. In terms of waste alone, globally, 50 million tonnes of clothes are thrown away each year, and 80% ends up in landfill. And in Australia, it's 23 kilos of clothing per person per year that goes in the bin. And textiles waste in landfill acts similarly to food waste in landfill. It produces harmful methane gases as it decomposes, 25 times more harmful than carbon, and this accelerates global warming. So we commissioned the mill to make blankets with their waste, and we drew on our circular economy theory to inform our business model, which moves away from the take, make, waste paradigm to a circular one, which is using waste as a resource, but also being able to remanufacture a product at the end of its life. So at Seljak Brand, we fundamentally believe that waste is a design flaw. And that people would agree with us if they could see a good example of how things were done differently. We thought that a carefully considered product would be made of existing materials, so you wouldn't need to mine anything or use virgin materials to make a product, and recyclable, because every resource would be too precious to lose. It would be durable, useful, and beautiful. So we set ourselves a pretty high standard, but frankly, we didn't think anything, we didn't want to bring anything into the world that didn't meet this criteria, because we kind of know that the world doesn't need it. So the Seljak Brand blanket is made from 70% recycled merino wool and a 30% blend of recycled alpaca, cotton, mohair, whatever else is on the factory floor, and then spun with some polyester for strength. Because when you recycle textiles fibers, we use a mechanical recycling process, so we're chopping them into small fiber lengths, so you need a strong fiber for them to grab onto. And basically we're collecting offcuts from the factory floor, we're shredding them, and we're combing them out and aligning them into a web, which is the top right image, which is the process you need before you can spin a yarn, which is the bottom left image, and then the yarn is woven into our blankets at the same mill, using big industrial looms. So once a customer has purchased a blanket and used it, and they no longer find value in the product, or it doesn't suit their lifestyle anymore, we have a return policy whereby we can collect the blankets free of charge to the customer and using a carbon neutral courier service, and bring the blankets back to the mill, and they can enter the recycling process again, meaning we can remanufacture blankets over and over, and they're never going to end up in landfill. So it's not just, what we're doing is not just textiles design or products design, it's system design, whereby the whole life cycle is considered of the product. And we just really think that businesses should be taking responsibility for the whole life cycle of their products. And yeah, this is kind of our closed loop infographic that kind of shows how the life cycle of our product isn't linear, which is where you take resources, make something and throw them away, but in fact circular. So the blankets we've made, because they're from wool waste, they're lightweight, they're insulating, they're odor resistant, they're antibacterial, they're cozy enough for indoors, durable enough for outdoors, and they also are extremely, have an extremely long lifespan. So blankets that are made at the mill that we work with in Tasmania have been known to outlive their owners. So when you're considering sustainable product design, longevity is key, because while having a remanufacture solution is really important, it is, you know, energy intensive and resource intensive. So designing for longevity as well as remanufacture is really key. Seljak Brand donates 1 blanket for every 10 blankets sold to the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre in Melbourne. So our grandparents were refugees from Slovenia. So yeah, it's really important to us that we make refugees coming to Australia feel safe, warm and supported when they get here. Since we've launched, we've tracked our impact. So we've diverted 3,800 kilos of textiles waste from landfill, and we've donated 284 blankets to the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre. I know you guys are looking at impact measurement as part of your course this week. So in the question time, I'm super happy to go into how we track measurement, and also what are some of the key measurement metrics that we're trying to add to our impact reporting, which is actually, it can be like quite difficult with some of the less like tangible impact points that you have as a business. But yeah, so in Seljak Brand's journey, there have been some challenges. So we've proved the recycled concept so desirable that the mill is running out of waste, and we needed somewhere else to make blankets. Plus our supplier has become our competitor. So the mill launched its own recycled range, and for us that's ultimately a win because we've proved waste is desirable, but it meant as a business we needed to differentiate. And furthermore, we have a product that's really cozy and mostly only sells in the wintertime. So we needed something lighter weight to suit the Australian climate in the summer. So in 2019, we introduced our European suppliers and our designed range, which are recycled lamb's wool blankets made at a mill in Lithuania. They're made using jacquard looms, so that allows for these kind of abstract patterns woven into the blankets, and that is a production capacity that isn't available in Australia. So we have the Seljak June and the Seljak Loon, and the Seljak June is made of textiles waste gathered from 16 mills around Europe. And the loon is made from post-consumer recycled wool. So that's woolen jumpers and clothing turned into new yarn in Italy, and then woven in Lithuania. So the mill we work with in Lithuania is 92 years old, and they produce really high quality recycled textiles and intricate designs. And this kind of enabled us to scale our production, diversify our suppliers. If you've only got one supplier, it can be a bit risky as a business. And it also enables us to offer a lighter weight product that can be used in the summertime as well in Australia. So offshoring production for a sustainable and ethical company is a pretty big deal, because we're used to really stringent workers' rights and environmental policies here in Australia when it comes to manufacturing. When I was doing my master's in Sweden, I took the opportunity of being in Europe to visit a lot of the facilities that we have ended up working with. So this is from the mill in Lithuania, and after a couple of visits, we commissioned an independent third-party auditor to visit the mill and make sure that that the environmental measures and workers conditions were up to the standards that we expect in Australia. And I then was curious about, the supply chain gets very complex in the textiles world. So then I traced the yarn back to Italy and visited an amazing little town in Italy that's been recycling wool for almost 100 years. And that was where we now source some of our yarn that's made out of the woolen jumpers. And being able to source yarn from post-consumer textiles waste as opposed to pre-consumer. So the pre-consumer is industrial waste. Post-consumer is our old clothes turned into new yarn, is really exciting for Seljak Brand because the post-consumer waste is where the bulk of the problem lies in waste generated. So another consideration with working offshore is the carbon emissions associated with shipping product to Australia. So we offset all of the shipping. And this year we've even taken it a step further and have done a full life cycle analysis of our products. And just last week, carbon offset Seljak Brand's entire carbon footprint to date, and know exactly how much our carbon footprint is as we make our products. So we can do this as part of like an ongoing strategy for the business. So since launching, we've had some major wins. We now have close to 3,000 customers. We have 27,000 followers on social media. We have stockists like Koskela in Sydney and the Hub General Store in Melbourne. And we're in the award-winning Paramount House Hotel in Sydney, and our blankets are in Spice's eco retreats around the country, and also in the high-end cabins along the Overland Track in Tassie, and a few of the other great walks down there. Last year we won the Design Files Sustainability Award, and this year we judged the same category. So we've really created a movement around waste, but there's still so much waste out there, and our work is barely making a dent in the problem. And we've had so many businesses approach us with their textiles waste, wanting to find sustainable solutions. So we had to collaborate to innovate. Basically, we realized that Seljak Brand's success is the progress of the whole textiles industry to find solutions for textiles waste. So when we work with waste, it's about collaborating, and it's about thinking in systems to create these beautiful products that also have an impact. So we've done a few projects so far. We've worked with Citizen Wolf in Sydney. They're a t-shirt company, and they approached us with their offcuts. They had bamboo offcuts, organic cotton, linen, merino, basically just offcuts that were too precious to throw in the bin. So we ragged their offcuts down at the mill in Tasmania, and it might not look like much, but this is like a very successful ragging experiment where we actually got the textiles waste to the composition and consistency whereby we could move on to the next phase of the recycling process, which is carding, to then be able to spin it into a new yarn. And we figured if we could spin a new yarn out of the fashion industry's waste in Australia, then we could provide a lot of Australian fashion brands with a waste pathway. So yeah, then we moved on to the next part of the process, which is the carding. And you can see here in this video that there's actually like big holes in the carding process. So that should all be like one continuous piece of material basically. And that was, yeah, like kind of a bit of a setback, and it was one of those moments where it's like, oh yeah, research and development's actually really hard, and it does take a lot of time and money and resources, and when you don't own the facility yourself to practice that and manage that, it can be really tricky. So yeah, like Edison says, you haven't failed, you've just found 10,000 ways that don't work. But what was really cool was this project then inspired the mill to go on and do their own like recycling tests, and now they work with Nobody Denim to turn all of their denim waste into blankets. So that was like a really cool outcome. Another project we've been working on, which is our first step into the furniture design realm, is the Pressing Matters floor lounger. And we did this in collaboration with Supercyclers, and they make bento boxes out of plastic collected from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And it was a natural fit to collaborate with them. And basically we partnered with a mattress recycling facility in Wollongong, and they process 1,000 used mattresses a day. And they had recycling pathways for like the timber frames, the steel, and the foam, but they didn't have a recycling pathway for the textiles when they pulled apart the mattresses. And it was about 5 kilos per mattress that was going in the bin. So we kind of took the challenge to like turn that waste material into a beautiful closed loop product. Because the waste is from mattresses is like a bunch of acrylic, some cotton, some wool, kind of like a bit of a mixed bag of fibers. And it's kind of too difficult to separate at a fiber level when recycling. We knew our design response needed to use that to our advantage. So in 2018, we started testing the possibilities of using the shoddy to create a sturdy material. And through a combination of felting, molding, compression, and heating and cooling, using like, a 5-ton hydraulic press, we were able to create a solid form out of the textiles waste without having to add glues, without having to change the composition or separate the fiber types or anything like that. Meaning we use the existing nature of the waste to create a material type that would be suitable for furniture application. So the other element of floor lounger is that we kind of believe that lounging around is important to kind of remedy the busy lives that we lead in today's complex world. And we're inspired by the sustainable lifestyles of people living in the blue zones in Japan. So this is a photo from Okinawa, and it's the blue zones are where people live the longest around the world. And this particular community would sit on the ground to eat meals, to share cups of tea with friends, to spend time with their families. So we kind of liked that idea of using the floor as a space to gather and foster community. So the floor lounger was created to to encourage rest, which so you can lounge on it, but also light activity, because you need to get up and down off the lounger. And finally, like a tool to gather, so you can have multiple loungers in one space to create community. So the low horizontal cell-like shape kind of encourages all of those three concepts. Also, the aesthetic of the textiles waste gives that variegated kind of speckle of the lounger, and in that way we kind of celebrate the waste as part of the design. Also, using textiles felting like naturally results in sound absorption, so the lounger is able to like help create a calming environment because it absorbs sound as well. Because we don't add anything to the material composition of the lounger, it can be disassembled and chopped up and recreated into the same material over and over. So we can close the loop on this product too. We found a production facility that can do this in Scandinavia, but we're trying to find a local manufacturer in Australia to bring Floor Lounger to market. This is it in its prototype phase. Because while blankets are relatively easy to ship from, a different country, a larger furniture product would be something we'd really want to be able to supply locally. So basically, Seljak Brand is kind of working within circular economy principles and has that like key idea of closing the loop on whatever we make, and using textiles as our medium, textiles waste as our medium to create various products to help do that. So for us, it's like the more ways we can make waste beautiful and useful, the better, because when we make waste beautiful, we make it desirable, and when we make waste desirable, we make it valuable. So if waste is valuable, less of it will go to landfill, less virgin resources will be extracted, and more people will be able to participate in a textiles model that is good for people and the planet. Thank you very much.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Sam. I don't know about you guys, but I really connected with the value proposition of Seljak. I love how you talk about diverting waste from landfills, but also celebrating it. I think that's a very, very powerful motivation. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So we do have a couple of questions that were popped here through the chat. I might start with those if that's okay.
Of course.
So the first one, what type of carbon neutral shipping do you use? You mentioned you have a few partners that are carbon neutral to get the products around. Could you maybe unpack that?
Yep. So we use Sendle for our reverse logistics. So when we're collecting blankets back, we're using Australia Post for like shipping out all our orders, because we work with a warehouse partner that works with them already. But I think Sendle, as like the first mover in carbon neutral shipping in Australia, and it was actually at a circular economy conference where I heard the founder of Sendle talk back in like 2014, where I got super into the whole the concept of the circular economy. I think like as a first mover, they've pushed the whole industry ahead, because like late last year, Australia Post announced they were going carbon neutral. So it's like the power of social enterprises to change like the bigger moving, system, and the larger part of the ecosystem. That's really inspiring.
It is indeed. It's so important that you surround yourself with people that are also sharing the vision. So that's great. Um, Another question here on the chat. So have you ever heard of blue economy? I know the existence of startup about orange and lemon fiber. So you could take, well, it's a few questions actually. I'll just go through them all. And you back it. You could take in consideration other kinds of fiber and materials. What's your future? And would you like to focus on the social side or the material fashion side of things?
Well, yeah, I can see the questions here, so I can go through them one by one. Yeah, so I think the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has the kind of list of schools of thought that inform the circular economy, and the blue economy is one of them. Biomimicry is one of them, which is what was, on that last slide I had. Also cradle to cradle. So they're all these types of thinking that are come under the umbrella of the circular economy and are super, that have kind of driven and are the backbone, I guess, of the circular economy. So the startup about orange and lemon fiber. Yeah, I think there are lots of textiles startups doing super cool things. Like there's pineapple leather, which is now commercially available for as a vegan leather alternative, which is awesome. In terms of because we're working with waste, we don't really get to choose what we work with. So I love tech fibers, and there's like a lot of advancements happening in that realm, and a lot of cellulose-based fibers like modal and those kinds of things that are becoming more sustainable options for the fashion industry. But we're kind of we're like the low-hanging fruit at the very end, where it's like, okay, what's all the waste of the industry and what can we do with that? In terms of like what our future is, we're definitely committed to making using products to inspire the greater ecosystem. So if we can bring innovative products to market, then it will kind of inspire some of the larger companies, because I think like small businesses like ours, like our direct impact is relatively small. Like I showed you our impact measurement. So like in terms of how many kilos of waste we've diverted from landfill, it's not that big in the grand scheme of things, but the flow on impact of the work we do, for example, the mill in Tassie now working with a large denim company to process their waste, is the kind of impact that Seljak Brand is contributing to. And when it comes to impact measurement, part of our, like what we're trying to work out at the moment is how we can measure those intangible contributions to the ecosystem, because it's a lot trickier to do that than measure exactly how many kilos of waste you're diverting, which is a simple measurement based on how much waste we know in a percentage form is per product we sell, for example.
That's fantastic. Actually, it's a very interesting topic that you touched on, the impact metrics. So how much thought and effort goes into defining what's relevant for Seljak, and I assume that would also change as the company grows and the impact changes as well. So could you maybe tell a little bit about how you work with impact metrics?
Yeah, of course. So for every production run we do, we'll map on an Excel spreadsheet per product exactly how many grams or kilos of waste is diverted. So in that very tangible, practical sense, it's pretty foolproof for us to measure our impact. What's a lot harder is like, you know, if that waste went to landfill, what impact would that have? Like, it's really hard to know, you know, how much methane like that would produce in landfill under different types of conditions, etc. So we kind of keep that, like our theory of change model is like textiles waste in landfill emits emissions. We're focusing on keeping it out. What we can measure is what is kept out of landfill, not necessarily how many less, you know, emissions are going into the atmosphere. And then on top of that, just this year is now we've embarked on our just like our carbon footprint journey. So as a, you know, we're going to turn 5 in March. So up until now, it's felt like we're kind of a startup, and you know, we like we don't necessarily have to have like certifications and all of those kinds of things to prove we're doing what we're doing. But now that we're kind of like tipping over into like business that's been around for a while, that's starting to grow, like we're focusing on more rapid growth now, it's the time where we really need to like focus on you know, potentially getting B Corp certified, having a life cycle assessment so we know exactly how much impact our product makes, because if it's ultimately worse for the planet, then we wouldn't do it. And tracking our carbon footprint so we can you know, appropriately offset our emissions. So yeah, it's kind of like an ongoing journey. Like the more you grow, the more you need to manage in terms of measuring, reporting, and that kind of thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's very interesting, and interesting also to hear that you still see yourself as a startup, especially with such great impact and growth. Beautiful. I might just check on the crowd here. Is there any questions, guys? I don't have any on the chat, but I have a bunch in my head. But conscious we have lots of people in the room. So is there anyone who would like to ask them a question? Just feel free to unmute yourself and shoot. Okay then. Sam, did you find lots of, oh, sorry, Carmen. Yes, unmute please.
I'm so sorry I missed the first bit of the presentation. I had trouble getting in. So I was just really interested to hear about, you mentioned a conference and other materials that may have been useful to you in developing your knowledge in the circular economy. So we rescue furniture and white goods that go to landfill unnecessarily, and we just take them and deliver them to humans in need. By the way, if you ever have blankets you want to give to refugees in Sydney, we can put them on the beds that are going out to them.
Oh, amazing.
But yeah, if you would have any resources to share on how to really build our knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we heavily relied on the Ellen MacArthur Foundation for continually up-to-date reports on the like global circular economy situation. The conference I was referring to was the first circular economy conference in Australia. That was like 20 people in a room. It was super small.
It's probably grown just a little bit since then.
Yeah, exactly. And since then, I think there are kind of like industry specific events that have popped up. So like the Australian Circular Textiles Association is now like where we do a lot of our like thought leadership work, and, you know, keep up to date with them on. But we also did a free online university course with Delft in the Netherlands, That was a circular economy course, and that, you know, that just kind of like maybe takes a few hours a week of your time, but it's a great way to like connect with people globally. And yeah, we did that like 5 years ago now, but I imagine like they're continually updating the course material.
Right.
Yeah, I think that would be a great place to start.
Thank you so much.
Or add on to, I mean. Yeah.
And why do you think the momentum is still not as great as in Europe or the other places you've been, Sam? Like in some ways, we hear that Australia is a very blessed country because we have resources and land and space, and then people don't really feel the need to take those actions, and they don't feel the urgency. Do you think that's true? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are like a few factors at play, like whether or not our government is forefronting those kind of policies is one. Also, I think like in the 90s, so much manufacturing and production was offshored, so our capacity to actually recycle physically is so reduced in Australia, and we all know we have a recycling crisis, and I think that kind of contributes to why circular economy solutions in Australia are trickier, because it's not like it's not like we actually have the local solutions at our fingertips. It's almost like we need groups of people in each industry or across industries to get together to start investing in that, like, practical capacity to you know, disassemble and recycle and all of those kinds of things. And I think also like in terms of Europe, and you know, I lived in Sweden for 3 years. Like the social democracy is just a really different, like, you know, structure and system. So there's kind of I think like the system with it and like which you're operating plays like a big part too, of course.
That's awesome. So lots of challenges, but also with the entrepreneurial hat on, lots of opportunities as well.
Exactly.
Yes. I have a question here on the chat. Do you have your own processing plant, or do you work in collaboration with other processing plants?
So we work in collaboration with other processing plants, and that's kind of like a like one of the questions we have for ourselves for the future is like, you know, if we wanted to raise like $2 million and build our own textiles recycling facility, you know, is that what we want to do, or is that the most impact we can make, or is it elsewhere? And like we're not totally sure on that point yet, but we have had we've had both like some very heavy like competitive behavior in the industry that's like felt like that's not a very appealing thing to do, as well as some really like collaborative opportunities from the industry. One of the textiles production facilities down in Melbourne is talking to us about a joint venture where maybe we could start something together. They have the manufacturing capacity, we have the product development and marketing ability basically. So I think that's, at the moment we don't, could be something in the future. But it's kind of working out where we think our impact would best, where our investment of time would best lie for the most impact.
That's very interesting. Thank you. We're almost at time, but I wanted to ask you one last question about the mindset. So usually, especially the students, right, they're looking at the frameworks and the tools to start a social impact enterprise, and approaching these wicked problems is very hard. So in your experience, how they should go about approaching these problems and trying to see what are the right questions to be answered?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big one, but I think for us, it's like really finding something you're passionate about, because I think, like, you know, and also just like kind of choosing a problem and really focusing on that, because there are, you know, so many different problems you can solve in the world. And I think if you're doing something you love, you know, staying on top of like the industry, knowing all the research, being, you know, like being a really active part of the ecosystem, all of those things that makes you like have a competitive edge and be part of an innovation movement will come really naturally and not really feel like work. And I think that's really important if you're embarking on a like social entrepreneurial journey, because it is a lot of work. Yeah, and I think you just have to really love what you're doing and or be extremely passionate about the issue.
That's a fantastic answer to finalize our chat, I think. Sarah, do you have any last words, any other info you want to mention?
No, just to say thank you so much, Sam. That was really, really inspiring, and I'm actually on your website right now, like trying to choose my next purchase. So beautiful. So really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk us through your experience as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure, and particularly talking a bit about your impact measurement as well. That's going to help the students who are going to be tackling how to do that tomorrow. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone. See you in the next session. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.